Let's start with a couple of minutes in silence. You may open your eyes now. I remember one incident. When I was 12 years old, I was in my school, in my class, and this gentleman came who was selling some sort of a device, a gadget, which was, which had the entire geometry box arrangement in one. He had made it like a toy kind of a thing. And I remember I was very fascinated by him because he was giving the demonstration. It was during the break, he was giving the demonstration that, it does this, it does that. And I was super excited. I just wanted that toy at any cost. So he said that, come 4 o'clock in the evening after school, and you can pay the money. It was 50 rupees, I believe, then. And you can get this toy. So after school, I went back home, and I called up my father, and he said, okay, I'll take you. I said, fine. So I took him, I went with him, and I saw my whole class was there. And that guy was standing, outside the class area, in the field. And all the kids were literally jumping on him for the toy. And I was just standing in a corner with my dad. And I kept watching that scene for some time. I kept watching it. And slowly, what happened was that seeing all this chaos and, kids jumping, and poor guy was hassled because he had to do everything himself. He was collecting the money. And, back in those days, we didn't have digital payments. So it was, he had to have the change and everything. And then he had to package everything and give to each individual kid. They were jumping on him and he was screaming, one by one, one by one. And I kept looking at that scene. But that chaos set an order within me. And I told my father, I said, let's wait. When everybody is done, then we will go and ask if he has any toy left or not. So me and my father, we kept watching. Then after everybody was gone, we approached him, and then he said that it's all sold out now. It's not there. So, I was very happy. I went back home. I was really happy because it had put me in a state of calm. I experienced an awareness by dropping off the desire. Sometimes that also happens, that when the desire drops, without you trying to do anything, try to interfere in any way, it just drops. And I remember that I was quite happy, quite peaceful. Although my dad was like, he said that, okay, we'll try some other time. We'll try to, get it from the market. And I must have been, I think, 11 or 12 years old. I was quite small at that time. But that was one taste of awareness, which I remember still now. I exactly remember what it felt like. And the same thing I would feel when I was working, in the Connaught Place area in Delhi. What I used to do was, after lunch, I had this habit of taking a walk. I still do. So, we all of us, the colleagues, we would have lunch together. And then I would just go by myself and, sit in one of the blocks of the Connaught Place area. And I would just simply watch people. Like I didn't look at phone or anything. I would just simply see people passing by. And at that time, I was not very happy in that job because that role was actually not of my skill. But I had to take up the job because that was the only thing available at that time. And I kept looking at people. I kept, Connaught Place is a very busy area in New Delhi. So I kept looking at people coming and going. And again, I felt the same serenity which I had felt when I was a child. And everything became absolutely calm. And when I went back to my office, it felt as if I've had 8 hours of sleep. Like when you feel, when you wake up in the morning and feel refreshed, that was the feeling. So you see, the idea of meditation is that spending a couple of minutes in silence, sometimes that awareness comes about. And once you get a taste of that, once you see it, you just cannot unsee that. And it changes something. There is no way to describe it. It has no form. It can only be described as love. That's a very used and abused words, but I don't know like how else to describe it. It's not excitement or not a feeling of bliss or a high. It's a very ordinary, very natural state, but very peaceful. So slowly what happens is once we get taste of that awareness, the desires also begin to fall off. Now, I'm not talking about small things, like food or things like that, but the desire to become something by doing something, that kind of falls off. And, many masters like Nisargadatta Maharaj or Ramana Maharishi Marg would talk about philosophy. They would talk about many theories, but they were very clear on this fact that it is only for those minds that are trapped in the intellectual happenings, that are trapped, that are bound intellectually, because they want an intellectual explanation. Because while intellect is a brilliant thing in phenomenality, it is still a part of the ego, the part of the mind. So it has the capacity to cut, divide, and discriminate. And, while critical thinking is very important, because without that, survival becomes very painful in the world. So there, your intellect is of immense benefit. But if you use that to inquire who you are, then it falls short in that understanding. Only when the mind melts into the heart, then the understanding actually comes. And that's not a personal understanding. That's what masters call the impersonal awareness of I am, or our beingness. It's very simple. It's very ordinary. And, because it is so simple, many people actually don't get to know. Because we have a habit, we want things to be complicated, because then the mind gets the satisfaction. Then the mind gets the satisfaction of having achieved something through effort. It is very difficult for mind to accept this fact that knowing your true nature does not require any effort. When the mind becomes harmonious, the reality becomes apparent. And there is no dialogue, there is no thought that tells us what reality is. Any thought that comes is a product of the mind, and hence it is going to be limited. It is going to cut. But the feeling, the sensation of being is unlimited. And what we forget mostly is that it is the ground of all experiential awareness. There is no perception possible without it. So it is the one that enables everything, every perception. You know, there is a saying in the Upanishads that the thorn of ignorance can be taken out with the thorn of knowledge. But at the end of it, even the knowledge is a thorn. So it keeps stinging. And you know, Kabir says it very beautifully. He says, पोथी पढ़ पढ़ जग मुआ, पंडित भया न कोई, ढाई अक्षर प्रेम के पढ़े सो पंडित होए. What that means is you can read all the scriptures in the world, you can acquire all the knowledge in the world. But till you have not understood the 4 letters of the word love, there is no possibility of real wisdom. Dhai akshar prem ke. Dhai means 2.5. In Hindi, it's 2.5. So in English, it translates as 4. And a majority of our struggle is to shut down the thinking mind, quiet the thinking mind. And what we do in that endeavor is that we start fighting with each and every thought. But you see, you know, thoughts are like the character Medusa. You know, Medusa, the woman head with the snakes. And whoever Medusa sees, you know, that the person turns into stone. So the thing is that, you know, trying to fight each and every snake with a penknife is not going to help. The snake may recoil, you know, but it will come up again. So every thought, trying to block each and every thought, is not going to help, because the thoughts will keep coming back. What is required is the sword of understanding to cut off the head of Medusa. What the head represents is the sense of personal identification, which is the ego. So once the ego is restored to its basic functioning of survival and daily operations, that is what I mean by dissolution of ego. It is not about killing the ego. Ego is required for the mind and body to operate. But that is not the problem ego, the functional ego, which informs us in the moment about things we need. For example, if you are hungry, the ego informs you that you need to eat food. That is the functional aspect of the mind, the working aspect of the mind. The problem is the thinking mind, which is concerned with the outcome, which ruminates in the past or sways into an imaginary future. That mind becomes our suffering. Okay, so anybody wants to share anything or ask a question, please, You can raise your hand and I will unmute you. Yes, Ravikant.
Namaste, Jagjot.
Namaste. Namaste.
I kind of have two questions. Of course, first one was a short one. Getting into meditation is kind of happens naturally, but while in the meditative state, there is also a constant thought that I observed, that when is it going to end, or is it going to end soon? I mean, is my, pretty much, how long should I be doing this? Is there a correct time for everyone? Maybe if I'm catching on so many thoughts, maybe this is time for me to stop it. Maybe someone else has endurance, they can go on for a while. Okay. Does everyone have to follow the 30-minute thing? Is it a common thing, or is it, again, is there a way to answer that, or how do
there is no restriction of any sort. You don't have to follow the 30 minutes mark. If you're comfortable with 5 minutes, you can be there for 5 minutes. And that is why I started with meditation today. I didn't start with the talk first, because if somebody wanted to join late, they could join it. Somebody wants to just attend it for 5-10 minutes, that's perfectly fine. There is nothing that needs to be done. There is no state that is need to be achieved. If some sensation, some thinking is arising in the mind, let it be so. Just observe it. I remember this used to happen to me also. I would keep a track of time, and I would think that, when will this end? If the time is running out, and this and that. And it is natural for the mind to create these thoughts. It all comes out of the deep sense of personal identification. And it is not that it does not happen in the case of sages, because the people I've spoken to say that thoughts come to everyone. It is just that in the case of sage, the thought does not carry forward in horizontal time. It comes, it is seen, it is witnessed, and then it dissolves. So the sage is continuously aware that the thinking is happening, the thought is happening, and that awareness itself breaks the chain of thinking. So there is no fixed, that is why I never tell you to focus on your breath or recite a mantra. If you want to do it, that's fine with me, but there is no method to this. I don't want you to follow any method. I don't want you to tell you any technique for this. Because if you what happens? Trying to silence the mind is a skill of the mind. That's a skill that can be learned. And there are some people who can sit for hours quietly, who go into deep, deep states of meditation. But when they come out, they, again, there is no change in them. It says that it doesn't help them in any way. They are the same, they're experiencing the same depressive episodes, and the thinking mind comes back. So, even the mind knows that you are at this time sitting in silence. So it deliberately becomes quiet, but it is a trick of the mind. But, when you don't offer any resistance, okay, when you don't, when you say, okay, fine, do whatever you want to do, let any thought come, whichever thought wants to come. Then in that surrender, you experience a different kind of energy. And slowly what will happen is that that anxiety about when the meditation will end, or if should I open my eyes, should I open my eyes partially and see, all those things happen. It's very natural. And I even say this, that I say, if you want to fall asleep, let that be also. Fall asleep. What's the problem? I know of many people, who who do that actually. And it's okay, because at that time, maybe mind wants to shut down for some time. It's fine to sleep also. I just tell them, make sure that you're on mute. Otherwise, you will give us an object of meditation.
Good. Awesome. Thank you.
Sorry. And your next question was?
Yeah, another thing that you mentioned about, like, while going into the job and then like you are not completely satisfied. I think this is a paradox that kind of like risen in me in terms of somewhere someone says things like meditation and everything, probably eventually enlightenment is towards becoming expressive and being creative, and it's a life of inspiration. So it doesn't matter which task you're handling. It could be a mundane task, but then you bring that value to it. And on the other side, I also hear that when you're getting into, like, when you're taking this very seriously, you slowly lose the interest in engaging with these activities. So you may not take interest in to participate in the job or in social activities and things like that. Slowly you're kind of like going away from that. So I see a paradox out there. What happened with you? How do you see this, and how to really tackle that?
Okay, so let me understand this properly. It is like, what you're saying is that at one point you get the information that you have to take it slowly, effortlessly, right? Is that what you're saying?
I hear two sides of like to approach a particular task or a job or something like that. Pretty much, I'm also kind of like getting through the same phase right now. Not too much motivation, but I wanted to attribute that to, as someone else was saying, like when you become serious towards spirituality, slowly you disengage with worldly activities like job and social activities. Maybe I don't know if I'm experiencing that. But on the other side, I also hear from some other spiritual masters. They say, like, it doesn't matter which task it is. Spirituality is supposed to help you to live a life of inspiration, and you would become expression of some creativity from within.
Okay.
So
okay,
the task doesn't matter.
Yeah.
You will bring some vigor to it.
Okay.
But
Right.
that is a paradox for me.
Actually, you see, Ravi, they are both true. They are both true in the sense that, now I mentioned about the mind. So there are two aspects to the mind. One is the working mind, and one is the thinking mind. So working mind is the one that is engaged in creative aspects, right? Like, for example, if you're a writer, or or if you're working in an organization, you have to make presentations and all. There you have your working mind working beautifully for you. Thinking mind is the one that is concerned with the outcome. What will this do for me? How will I grow? Right? That concern of becoming or unbecoming. So you see, what happens is, with the understanding, the thinking mind begins to subside, and the working mind, as a result, starts becoming more active. So you will notice that when the thinking mind is not there, the quality of your work, the creativity of your work actually improves. And this is something which I've seen, because I started writing articles in 2019. At that time, I was not writing much about non-duality. I was just writing general things. But what I saw was that I used to be concerned with how people will perceive my writing. Maybe I should include this, then there'll be more, then I'll get more appreciation. That kind of thing was not producing the quality which was needed, right? So it was not from the heart. Now what happens? Now everything comes from the heart. I never come prepared for any meeting. I just go spontaneously with what comes in the heart, because there is no concern in my case about what others will think. I have no control over others thinking, right?
Mhm.
So in that aspect, the creativity will definitely increase, but at the same time, the concern with my growth, right, with my happiness, my future, that will also come down. That will also come down. And you see, it is a mix of both. Now again, Ramana Maharishi was very clear on this, that if you are a householder, you have to do your duties diligently. You have to ensure your family's comfort, because there are responsibilities and you have to take care of them.
Mhm.
It is not that spirituality is about abandoning your family, and you can abandon everyone and maybe go to the caves. What will you do with your mind? When you go to the caves, your mind will be at home. And when you are at home, you want to run up to the caves. That is the nature of mind. It just wants to divert from this moment, from the present moment. It wants to lurk in the past, or it wants to be in an imaginary future. And that becomes painful. So I hope that answers the question.
It does. Thank you very much.
Okay. So I would say, let things happen the way they are happening, without worrying about progress or creativity. Let things happen the way they are happening. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Anyone else wants to ask anything? Okay. Yes, Radhika.
Namaste, sir.
Hello.
There is one doubt with me. It's like
Yeah.
when Krishnamurti tells, like, see your anger or see your irritation. I don't understand, like, how is it to be observed? I just get, when I get irritation, I know I am getting irritated. And with the flow, I do things. And then I will be like, oh, this is what he said. At that moment, I forget it. It's like, okay, if I see a snake, I just run. I know that was the right action. But in this irritation thing or something like anger or any of the emotions, I don't know how it is to be seen as a new thing. And it's like the repetition of what had happened before. All those things comes without. It is like it's a fraction of moment. It comes. I don't even understand how it comes. Also, it's that fast maybe.
Yeah. See, the awareness is operating at every level. Okay. So, see, you can see your feelings in that moment. You are aware of that awareness also, that is being aware of those feelings
Yeah, but
also.
that is, sorry, sir, but that is after I get that irritation moment, then I get the awareness. No? At that
Yes, of
moment,
course. Yes, of course. That is okay. That is fine. You know, it is not in our control when we get the awareness, right?
yeah, yeah.
The awareness simply cuts off the thinking, right? Because
Huh.
the moment you become aware that the feeling is there, that I'm watching the feeling, then the
And then I
feeling,
stop.
yeah,
Huh.
then it
Yeah,
stops,
yeah, then
right?
it stops. Huh. Yes,
Yeah,
sir.
then it stops. But at what point it stops is not in your control. Sometimes it may carry forward for long, right?
Yes, sir.
Sometimes
Because this,
it may,
yes, sir, correct. Because
yeah,
2019, these things have started. So at 2020, it was after 1 hour or 2 hours that I used to get away.
yeah.
Now it's
So,
like at least of 10, 15 minutes, I'll be aware. What am I thinking? Okay, stop it, man. Like that, I said. Yeah. That
Yeah. So you know what happens is that when you have absorbed the message, when it has penetrated your being, slowly these moments of witnessing will start happening earlier. And at some point, it will also happen that even before the sensation arises, you will instantly become aware that it is going to arise. And in that moment, it gets cut off. Even that happens. But, we don't have control over these things. So whether it happens earlier or it happens late, it is not in our control. But there is something which is constantly aware of what is happening. The more you rest in that space of your beingness, which is the ground of all of these experiences, you get to realize uh, you get to realize the essence of it, right? So I don't say there is any practice or any method to become, to achieve that, because otherwise what will happen, if you try to practice this, if you try to become vigilant and try to break the thought at every point, then mind will get trained to do that. You see, the mind will know, this type of thought is coming, let me cut it. But the mind still survives, right? The mind survives. And what will happen in the next moment when the mind fails to catch that and you get swayed into thinking, then you'll say, oh my God, I failed. Then you will blame yourself for not being able to catch the thought in time. And then that will produce guilt, right? So that is the continuation of the thinking mind, which it propagates like this. It is just going to produce some sensation or the other. So what I say is, let the awareness do its job, right? See, I was just speaking to a friend of mine this morning, and I said that, I had nothing to do with the teaching of Advaita. I was a completely materialistic guy living a, usual life, uh, which regular people live, working, have my family, job, everything. But over all these years, 22 years I've lived in this place, there is a street outside my house that says Ramana Maharishi Marg. There is an ashram just walking distance from my house, which is Shri Ramana Maharishi Kendra. It was always there, and every day I would pass through that area, I would look at those words, Ramana Maharishi Marg. The pointers were always there, And, I'll just tell you one more thing, very interesting thing. Now, when I was small, when I was in school, we used to live in Lucknow. And even there was a teacher by the name of Papaji, H.W.L. Punjaji, who was a direct disciple of Ramana Maharishi. And I believe he was in somewhere, I'm not too sure about this, but somewhere around Lal Bagh area. I'm not too sure about this. I may be wrong, but it was very close, to my area. And I'm sure my father must have heard about him because he was quite well known in those times, in the 90s and the early 80s. So I see so many pointers from the universe putting me in this direction. So I say, leave it to the awareness. The awareness itself is the poison for the thinking mind. And when the thinking mind dissolves, it cuts off the head of Medusa, which we were talking about earlier. The mind itself cannot do anything to manipulate, to control the understanding, Otherwise, people ask me, like, how can I be better at witnessing? In witnessing, there is no you. Witnessing means the absence of you. Witnessing means what Jiddu Krishnamurti says, he calls it total attention. That includes everything. And, most of us are not even aware because we are so conditioned, no, when we look at things, when we look at the news or when we talk to other people, we are constantly filtering our perception. We're constantly doing it. Some of us are not even aware that we are doing it subconsciously. But when it is understood that there is no doer of anything and things happen, then that filter begins to fade. And automatically an awareness comes about, which colors all perception, all everything complete. It is a direct perception, I would say. So there is no analysis, there is no judgment towards anything happening. So if the feeling is arising, let it arise, let it play out. Sometimes you may become aware that it is there, sometimes you may not become aware. There is no performance here, there is no achievement here. It is simply being. Ramana Maharishi said, your job is not to be this or that, your job is to be. And in being, you will find your liberation. Okay? Okay. Okay. Any more questions or sharings? Wait.
Hi.
Yes, hi.
I have this question.
Yeah.
So like we understand, like sometimes people, like we or the other people are reacting based on the conditioning and they are seeing from their perspective. So like it's not about like us, I'm telling, it's about the others, like reacting to a situation, or like normally having a discussion, or in an office scenario somebody is telling you, but from their perspective, their experiences. But sometimes their suggestions or their discussion or their opinion is quite harsh or rude. So knowing that it is coming from conditioning, but there are scenarios where we need to stand up, take a stand for ourselves. So so I do, like I like, if we see everything is conditioning, so uh like I feel that sometimes, that if like internally I think like that, but people tend to take it as a weakness.
Yes. So you see, it is not about being a pushover. If somebody is unkind, it is perfectly okay to set up a boundary and tell them that what they did was not good. And in that, so the reaction to a reaction happens in that moment. And, it's not in our control who talks to us in which way, who behaves with us in which way. I mean, people are moody. And while I do understand that it is happening because of conditioning, it is perfectly okay for me to, set those boundaries. But those boundaries should not come from a place of ego. They should come from a place of compassion, right? So what I do is, say somebody is rude to me, somebody says something mean to me. Now it's up to you what you do in that situation. You either say no, that this was not the right thing to do, I felt hurt, you can definitely express myself. Or if you feel that that person is not open to such a discussion, and you feel that this relationship does not have much in common, then you're perfectly okay to take whatever decision you think is good in that moment. What that message says is that the dialogue which comes up afterwards, how dare they say this to me, I should have done that, I should have shown them their place. That is the thinking mind. That is the poison. The one that, puts the blame on the other. That is like saying that, okay, you did this to me, right? You hurt me intentionally. So it is not about what is happening in the moment. In the moment, you do what is required. But the dialogues which come up afterwards, right? The labeling which comes up afterwards, that was a horrible man. That is what is the problem. So that at that level, I say that is the thinking mind. So once it is clear that there is no individual doer and things are happening according to conditioning, there is actually no reason to hate people. There is no reason to have deep resentments. Because, resentments in relationships and acquaintances and friendships, it never does anything for us. It burns us from within. I say that it is like, there's a saying that it is like drinking poison yourself and hoping the other person to die. That is what resentment is like. If you drink poison, it is going to burn you first. It may not do anything for the other person. So, the whole idea is do what you want to do in the moment. And don't, and and when the thinking mind comes up afterwards, which says, oh, I should not have reacted this way, I should not have done this, done that. Of course, if you behave harshly with someone and a regret comes up later, it is perfectly okay to apologize to them. You can tell them, okay, I behaved this way, I'm sorry, I didn't mean it. That is perfectly fine. But then, carrying that dialogue forward and saying that, oh, what a horrible person I am, I'm not worthy of love, and I'm very reactive, all those dialogues, all those thoughts, that are that forms the thinking mind, the ego mind. So that is what the teaching is talking about. It's not talking about what is to be done in the moment. So I hope that answers the question. Okay. Any more questions? Any more sharings? Okay, I think we can conclude this session for now. We'll meet next Sunday.